Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. And in this video, we're just going to do a quick book review by Barbara Ehrenreich called Nickel and Dimed on Not Getting By in America. So this book was published a long time ago in 2011. I'm just going to go over to the Wikipedia page about this book. And I remember this book, I first saw it in high school. Now, when I was in high school, I grew up in a nice, well-to-do suburb in Southern California. And so I always just thought that like being poor or whatever was just segmented to like a different segment to the population and kind of would never affect me. And when I became poor as an adult and had this wake-up call, um, you know, again, a lot of the reason why I suffered as a young adult was just from bad advice from people who were supposed to be my teachers, mentors, parents, brothers, family members, whoever, right? And so I kind of like, I had to have like a moment with myself where it's like, is it my fault that I fail or is it the fault of the system? Right. And there is a big portion of it where, again, some of it could be your fault, but if you live in a society where, you see like articles where more than 50% or whatever people live paycheck to paycheck, or more than 90% of people who bought a home regret it, you could argue it's really not your fault and the fault of the system, right? So, just kind of the reason why I talk about this book, I think as an adult, when I graduated college and couldn't find a job back in, the late 2000s, and ultimately, I just kind of didn't do anything for a while. It took me a long time to kind of actually decide that I'm going to live on my own. And, I just didn't have any job experience or anything. So I decided to kind of start out with the low wage jobs. And then when I thought about my experiences in those low wage jobs, how it made absolutely no sense, I read this book, Nickel and Dimed, and it really mirrors the experience that the author wrote. And the author, I think, was a former biology professor in Montana State. And I don't necessarily agree with her politics, but I do agree with her journalism and assessment of the situation. But let's just kind of take a look here at the Wikipedia article. So basically, what happened, just a quick summary, is that she went undercover as a person who would work minimum wage jobs to figure out what it's like, because she was a professor, and professors, they don't make the best money, but they're not like minimum wage poor, right? And so she'd start off working waitress jobs and right here, and then just kind of write about the experience as well as working, I think, at retail too. And so if we look here, it says that she investigates many of the difficulties low wage workers face, including the hidden cost involved in such necessities such as shelter. So the poor have to often spend much more on daily hotel costs than they would to pay to rent an apartment if they could afford the security deposit and first and last one's fees and food. So the poor have to buy food that is both more expensive and less healthy than they would if they had access to refrigeration appliances need to cook. Another thing too is that low wage jobs require only unskilled labor. So she found that manual labor requiring highly demanding feats of stamina, focus, memory, quick thinking, and fast learning. So, even jobs like retail, Walmart, those require a lot of energy and work. Like that's why I would just never ever work those jobs, just because I would after 1 week I'd probably collapse. Same with McDonald's. Constant repeated movement creates a risk of repetitive stress injury. Pain must be worked through to hold a job in a market with constant turnover, and the days are filled with degrading and uninteresting tasks. She also details several individuals in management who roles who serve mainly to interfere with worker productivity, to enforce employees to undertake pointless tasks, and to make the entire low-wage work experience even more miserable. And this is a big one too. Like I worked retail for a little bit and I think I quit after a month because I did not understand how this works, where they just randomly change schedules from week to week. You think like in general, businesses, their peak hours and days are kind of the same from week to week. But I don't understand why they would just keep changing schedules and what the purpose of that is, right? And so all these things where even though being rich sucks, being poor is even worse. Like I always had this fantasy when I was a kid, well, at least poor people have each other. And then she actually writes in the book, they actually don't. And I was like, shoot, this is not what I wanted because, you know, growing up in a rich area, I just felt like it was very isolating. Maybe I was like, maybe poor people have it better. That's why they stay poor. Totally not the case, folks. Most people, they just don't know what to do. And a lot of times what's really sad is that when you actually give people opportunities because they just don't know what they don't know, they don't take them, right? So let's just kind of go in here. She argues that help needed signs do not necessarily indicate a job opening. More often, their purpose is to sustain a pool of applicants in a fields that have notorious and rapid turnover employees. So there's a lot of industries out there, even like the not so um, low, what you would not consider to be low class, maybe like real estate agent or insurance agent, where they just have incredibly high turnover, just because they don't, the people in charge don't know how to lead and manage teams, employees, and they just kind of churn and burn, right? So it's kind of the standard with many, many industries, including retail and some of the other ones that I just mentioned. Um, and so let's keep reading. She also posts that one low wage job is not support enough to support one person, let alone a family. And that's how I felt when working minimum wage jobs, where it's like, how does anybody survive on this? And the thing that really like blew my mind is seeing them with sometimes iPhones and stuff is like, how do you afford that? You know what I'm saying? Like, how in the world do you afford that? But sometimes it happens. And then Einrich concludes with the argument that all low-wage workers, recipients of government or charitable service like welfare, food, and healthcare, are simply not living up to generosity of others. Instead, she suggests that we live off their generosity. And that's really true. Like, this is why I'll never work a low-wage job again. It's not if, the Office Space movie kind of gave me a fantasy where it's like, oh, working unskilled labor it must be much easier than being a tech worker. Folks, being a tech worker is, I'm pretty sure, as stressful and pointless as it is not as stressful as hard as, let's say, doing like a low wage job, right? And so so a lot of times when I see like people working those jobs, I'm like, if you stopped, if everybody, society is a collective, and this is kind of what's happening with Hollywood strikes, just stop accepting bad conditions in anything that they did as a collective, they would just kind of stop. But unfortunately, the bar is so low because there's no leadership almost anywhere. People just kind of think, well, this is the best I can do. And you really just got not, yeah, just have to not take that, right? Like a person who has standards to say, no, I'm not going to take this is actually a rarity in our society, right? Right. So that's something that you kind of have to be aware of. But most people, they just get by and live day to day, and you kind of need a and sometimes like when you're on this journey where you want more for yourself, what's going to happen is that you're going to get 99 no's until you get that one yes, and then that one yes will be really, really good for you. But for the most part, most people cannot take that, and they just kind of take whatever is given to them, and that's why one of the reasons why a lot of them suffer. And I know this isn't really about what's written in the book, but it's just kind of my 2 cents regarding, getting out of the minimum wage mindset. And I feel sorry for people who ever work those jobs because I know the conditions there, and I would have never known that as a teenager because I lived in a well-to-do area, and we just assumed that if we went to college and graduated, that everything would be okay. And you face the harsh reality of that mindset, and you're like, wow, like that's totally not how life works. And I mean, it's kind of sad that that's just how it is. But anyways, all right. So yeah, just wanted to do a quick review of this book. Very insightful of the conditions of the working poor. Um, I wouldn't, if it were me, I would just never. I just found it, it's like this weird mystery of like why things are the way they are. Even like Amazon, I already know that people are like, the reason I don't like to order from Amazon is because I know like the delivery drivers are probably pissed in bottles, and it's just like, do I really want to support that, right? If you don't know what I'm talking about, just do a Google search. about Amazon drivers having to like because they have such insane targets, times and KPIs or key performance indicators, they literally just piss in bottles in their truck just to make those key performance timelines or milestones. So, okay, well, this is Korean Atlanta Mentorship. If you have any questions, comments, leave them below. If you're interested in joining our group, go ahead and click the link, Google form link below, and submit it, and then we'll get on a Zoom call to do an introduction if you're interested in joining. Or you could email us by going to the About section of the YouTube page. Have a great day, everybody, and we will speak next time.